when one car made every other one look outdated. It didn't arrive with shock or spectacle. No radical styling. No record-breaking numbers. And yet, within months, everything else on the road began to feel strangely old. Not slower, not worse, just behind. This car didn't introduce a single feature that competitors couldn't copy. It didn't rely on exotic materials or secret technology. What it changed was far more unsettling. It changed expectations. To understand how this happened, we need to return to a moment when progress was defined by addition. More features, more screens, more modes, more options. Cars grew heavier, more complex, and more impressive. On paper, this model went the opposite direction. The team asked a question no one else was asking. What if improvement meant removing friction instead of adding capability? What if the future wasn't louder, but quieter, faster, but calmer, smarter, not more complicated? They didn't strip the car down. They refined it. Interfaces were simplified until interaction felt natural. Systems anticipated needs instead of demanding input. Transitions between functions disappeared. Nothing called attention to itself, and that absence became noticeable immediately. Drivers noticed it first. They struggled to explain what felt different. The car didn't amaze them in short bursts. It didn't overwhelm with features. Instead, it felt like it belonged to a later time, where decisions had already been made and complexity no longer leaked into experience. After stepping out, other cars felt cluttered. Buttons felt excessive. Menus felt slow. Alerts felt intrusive. The contrast was jarring. The car hadn't raised performance bars. It had raised comfort with clarity. Reviewers tried to categorize it. Minimalist, intuitive, elegant. None of the labels captured the effect fully. The model didn't feel simplified. It felt resolved. And once something feels resolved, everything else feels unfinished by comparison. That perception spread quickly, not through advertising, but through experience. People didn't talk about features. They talked about relief. Relief from decision fatigue, from constant prompts, from systems demanding attention instead of offering support. The car didn't ask drivers to learn it. It learned them. In doing so, it created an uncomfortable contrast. Competitors weren't obsolete because they lacked technology. They were obsolete because they still required effort. And once effort becomes visible, it's impossible to unsee. The car hadn't introduced the future. It had skipped ahead to a version of it everyone suddenly wanted. And that shift was about to force the industry to confront how outdated its idea of progress had become. The unease spread faster than anyone expected. Test drivers moved between vehicles and felt the difference immediately, not in power or speed, but in mental load. Other cars demanded attention. This one gave it back. Engineers studying the model realized the breakthrough wasn't technical novelty. It was coherence. Every system spoke the same language. Visual design matched interaction logic. Software timing aligned with human rhythm. Nothing fought for dominance. That unity made everything else feel fragmented. Competitors rushed to respond. Feature lists grew longer. Interfaces were refreshed. Screens multiplied. But these changes missed the point. They treated symptoms, not cause. Adding polish couldn't compensate for a lack of clarity. The model didn't overwhelm drivers with choice. It removed unnecessary ones. This was deeply threatening. For years, progress had been sold through expansion. More options meant more value. More control meant more sophistication. This car proved the opposite. Restraint felt premium. Silence felt advanced. Inside rival companies, design meetings grew tense. Teams debated what could be removed without hurting perception. The answer was rarely clear. Too much had been built on accumulation. Removing features meant confronting why they were added in the first place. The market reacted subtly but decisively. Owners reported lower fatigue. Short drives felt calmer. Long journeys felt shorter. They arrived less stressed, less distracted, less drained. The benefit was emotional, not measurable, and that made it powerful. Once drivers experienced that calm, tolerance for clutter vanished. Cars that once felt luxurious now felt noisy. Interfaces that once felt rich now felt busy. The baseline had shifted, and the shift was irreversible. Manufacturers tried to quantify the advantage. They measured reaction times, eye movement, error rates. The data supported what drivers already knew: reduced cognitive load, improved safety, satisfaction, and trust. The car didn't just feel modern. It behaved like it understood people. That understanding couldn't be retrofitted easily. It required starting from a different question. Not what can we add, but what can where that humility didn't arrive easily. For many teams, admitting the car's advantage meant confronting years of accumulated decisions. Features added to justify refresh cycles. Interfaces layered to differentiate trims. Systems designed to impress in showrooms rather than disappear on the road. Undoing that was harder than building something new. Simplicity without intention is just confusion. The original car succeeded because it was designed from a single, disciplined philosophy. Every interaction was questioned, every alert justified, every choice evaluated against one criterion. Does this reduce effort over time? That long-term lens was rare. Most competitors designed for first impressions. This car was designed for 1,000-mile. Engineers obsessed over edge cases, not control them, but to soften them. The vehicle didn't demand attention during routine moments, leaving drivers free to focus on the road, not the machine. As months passed, the advantage compounded. Owners formed habits around the car's predictability. Muscle memory replaced learning curves. Trust replaced vigilance. When they returned to other vehicles, even newer ones, the friction felt exhausting. Industry analysts began noticing a pattern. The car didn't just win comparisons. It changed what people compared. Questions shifted from horsepower and screen size to ease and calm, from novelty to absence of irritation. Brands that couldn't answer those questions sounded increasingly defensive. Inside boardrooms, pressure mounted. Product planners realized that adding features no longer guaranteed relevance. Worse, it risked accelerating obsolescence. Cars overloaded with interaction felt dated faster than restrained ones. Complexity aged quickly. The uncomfortable truth emerged. The future didn't look more advanced. It felt more finished. And the car that made every other one look outdated had achieved that not by racing ahead, but by stepping aside, removing obstacles between human and machine. That realization marked a turning point. Because once drivers experience a world with less friction, they stopped tolerating it elsewhere. And that intolerance was about to reshape not just design, but the very pace of automotive progress itself. The industry adjusted slowly and unevenly. Some manufacturers doubled down on spectacle, betting that excitement could outweigh fatigue. Others began the harder work of subtraction, guided by data and humbled by experience. Design teams changed how success was defined. Instead of asking what would impress in a showroom, they asked what would disappear into daily life. Interfaces grew calmer. Alerts became rarer. Systems learned to wait instead of interrupt. Progress became quieter. The car that made every other one look outdated never claimed superiority. It simply revealed a preference people didn't know they had. Calm over clutter, ease over excess, understanding over control. As those preferences solidified, obsolescence took on a new meaning. Vehicles didn't feel old because of age. They felt old because they demanded effort. And effort, once unnecessary, became unacceptable. The model's influence spread beyond its own segment. Commercial vehicles adopted similar philosophies. Infotainment systems across brands simplified. Even performance cars began reducing interaction noise, recognizing that clarity improved confidence. The shift wasn't universal, but it was permanent. Once drivers experienced a machine that respected their attention, they stopped tolerating those that didn't. Expectations reset, and no amount of power or prestige could fully compensate for mental friction. Looking back, the car's legacy became clear. It didn't redefine technology. It redefined comfort, and in doing so, it exposed how outdated the industry's idea of progress had become. Because the future doesn't always arrive louder or faster. Sometimes it arrives quieter, more complete, and once you've lived with that future, everything else feels like the past. So, what do you think? Would you trade excitement for effortlessness? Subscribe to join the journey. When one